Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host Gail Burke, and our guest tonight is Beverly City Councilor Matt St. Hilaire. Before we continue, though, Gail has a top of the page, but I do want to remind you at the end of the show you're going to see email addresses for both Gail and I. Please don't hesitate to email us. Tell us what you think of the show. Give us some criticisms or some kudos, whatever you'd like. We'd love to hear from you. Gail?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share something with you that I heard on the radio and then I read it on the internet. Some very disturbing news from several universities throughout the country. And it has to do with some black graduate students and they have requested from Harvard that they have a separate graduation service than the rest of the Harvard community. They will go to the other service, which includes everyone, but they want their own separate graduation. It's very disturbing because from kindergarten through high school through college, the overriding theme seems to be diversity. These students seem to have missed that. They want their own black-only graduate ceremony, and they're trying to tell us this is not about segregation. It's about fellowship and building a community. Well, I don't quite understand that, and I wonder when these people go out into the working world, are they going to segregate themselves from the people that they work with? So I think that the administrations of Stanford and Harvard and Temple and Columbia should tell these students this is not the thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the real issues of the day with Matt, talking about things going on in the city of Beverly. Matt, maybe a month or so ago, the city council voted to reduce the speed limit in the city of Beverly to 25 miles an hour. I spoke to another councilor about this, and I asked him why. And he said, well, it's for safety reasons. And I said, okay, show me the evidence, show me the information that says that the streets are unsafe right now at the speed limits that they are. And his response to me was, I don't have that information in my back pocket. I got to tell you, I was kind of cranky with that answer. When you vote on something, do you have reasons why you vote on it besides the mayor asked me to?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And first, thank you for having me back. And it's a pleasure to be back. And I hope George is feeling better. Yeah, I think, certainly for me, I always go to every city council meeting prepared. And certainly when we have a vote on any sort of issue, I do my own independent research aside from what the mayor has presented to us. And on that particular issue, this is the ability to reduce speed limits was part of Governor Baker's municipal modernization bill, which gave cities and towns a lot more ability to make changes locally at the local level. This applied to areas where there was not a posted speed limit already. So if there's a posted speed limit, that speed limit will still stay in place, and that's something that Mass DOT monitors. The reduction from 30 to 25 is primarily for roads that, like I said, aren't posted already, and they tend to be side roads or not primary roads. And I know as a city councilor, I get lots of complaints about speeding across the city in all sorts of areas. And the mayor did present some data related to traffic accidents and so forth. And combined with my general feedback that I've been getting from residents, I felt it was an appropriate thing to do. Frankly, I think reducing the speed limit really isn't going to have any impact unless there's a plan for enforcement, which I think is really the critical area in terms of addressing speeding. So, that was my take on
Well,
it.
see, that was my next question. Is there more enforcement now to justify, the lower speed limit? And if there isn't more enforcement, why even have a speed limit?
Well, I think the police department has a lot of challenges that they face. A lot going on with the opioid crisis. They've been dealing with, I think, shortages on staff, but I think Chief Little has been committed to trying to get out and do more enforcement, try to encourage his officers to get out there and do that. I think generally speaking, I think lower speed limits are a good thing for our community. I think they do. We have had some really violent accidents where pedestrians have been hit, and I think anything we can do to kind of reduce the speed limit. We have a college here, a lot of young people driving around our roads. I think it's important that we try to have a safe community.
I know, I live on one of those roads.
Yeah.
Believe me, nobody obeys a speed limit. And this is Endicott, people going to and from with the buses, the
Yeah.
trucks, the vans, and no sidewalks. So, and yet people continue to ride their bikes and walk or run on Boyle Street. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but there's going to be a horrific accident.
Traffic has been a big issue in the city. I think as we have developed more, we've got more cars.
Well, we're a cut through
Yeah.
from 128 to Hale Street, and from Hale Street to 128. And I've spoken to one of the city councilors.
Heard from your neighbors as well.
And my neighbors, yes. And whether it's to make the street a one-way street, to prevent trucks, big trucks, buses from going down there, I think something really needs to be done.
Yeah, it's certainly an issue that I think is important
Yeah.
to deal with.
All right, so you brought up another interesting point. Whether you realize it or not, I don't know, but the city of Beverly seems to be getting and approving a lot more apartments and big buildings with lots of people. That's going to hurt the traffic situation even more than what we have now. But not only is it going to hurt the traffic situation, we built a high school that wasn't quite big enough for its needs a few years ago. Now we're building a junior high school or middle school, call it what you want, that my understanding is kind of shaky in terms of the size of that school. But when you have hundreds of more apartments, you have dozens of more kids. And that cost us a lot of money, and we're building a school that can't fit them.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the biggest issues we're facing right now. Beverly has been changing a lot. We are getting a lot of development, especially downtown, Rantoul Street. I am pro-development. I think, we can't not grow as a community. I think any community that stays stagnant is going to fall behind. So we do have to grow, but I think it needs to be balanced. And when you look at potential growth on Folly Hill, when you look at all these apartments popping up, you wonder what is the big picture vision and what is the plan. I've been hearing from a lot of folks about the impacts that these developments will have on our schools, on our roads, our traffic, infrastructure. Can the police and fire? Will we need more of those folks to keep us safe? So I think this is a critical issue that the city's facing. To some extent, a lot of this is being done without city council approval. A developer is free to build on his property, based on what the current zoning is. But I think the balance is the key. And
But you bring up another point, particularly the McKay School. Now, that was bought by a group who turned it into apartments.
right.
And the apartments have only been open for maybe a year and a half. And now I read in the paper that they're going to be turned into condos. Yeah. And the people that live there have to get out. Yeah. They have a year to either buy the condo or find housing elsewhere. And there are four affordable housing units there. What are these people going to do, and how did this happen? when you sell a building like that, are there no provisions made for
A developer,
the buyer?
yeah. I mean, I think a developer is able to determine based on the market conditions, whether they want to use them as apartments or condos. That's not something that requires certainly city council approval. And I think that's a big thing. The market is sort of driving all of this. Beverly is a great place to live, work, to commute into Boston, to raise a family. Our schools are doing very well. We built a new high school, a new middle school underway. So we're attracting a lot of people to come here, which is a good thing. You want Beverly to be a place where people enjoy living and raising a family. But developers are here. They're here to make money, and they're here to do what's best for their company and their interests. And I think, as a city council, we need to be thinking about the big picture and the rest of the impacts that go along with that. And I
But
was
it
opposed to
seems
the
like-
Brimble Ave. I wanted to see a more limited approach to what's happening on Brimble Avenue. I think that traffic impact, we haven't even seen that yet. That's going to be
gonna be
30,000 vehicles
tough,
a day on that week on that road. I'm opposed to a big scale development on Folly Hill. I don't think that's going to be good for Beverly, especially when you're talking about access. There's only one way in and out of Folly Hill right now. There's been talk of access through Raymond Farms or through Ryle Side. I'm against that. I don't think we want these access roads coming through our neighborhoods. I mean, that's not what we want. So for me, I think, you have to understand that developers are dealing with the market conditions. They have a job. Their job is to make money and to build. Our job is to figure out what's best for Beverly.
Right, but with that in mind, there is zoning changes that could be made.
Right.
Keep in mind that when it costs roughly $12,000-13,000 per kid in the school system right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you have these complexes going up, and they have 2 kids in there, we're losing money. Right. We're losing money with 1 kid in an apartment. And so the more apartments you build, the more money we lose. The more money we lose means that our taxes have to go up. And it's time the city council realize that.
Yeah, I mean, the unique thing about Beverly is our access into Boston through the commuter rail,
Right.
And particularly the Beverly Depot area. And I think a big push has been to create workforce housing and really what's called transit-oriented development that ideally is based for folks who want to, single young professionals who want to come in and out of Boston. The concern I have is that those folks might be leaving a single-family home. In some instances, you might have seniors who are going into those homes and leaving a home behind, and then you have a family moving in. And so, I think the development in general creates more of what you're saying, and that's that's what we need to keep an eye on. And is that planned for, and is that sustainable?
Well, where are most of these people coming from? Are they coming from other cities?
It's a good question. I haven't really done a deep analysis of that. I think we've recently the city did a housing study, and what we're finding is that we have a lot of overburdened folks in terms of their housing costs here. I mean,
Yeah.
a third of Beverly residents, I think it was, are considered housing burden in that they're paying. In some cases, up more than 50% of their income is going to their housing costs. So I think there is a need for housing. It's again, it's all about balance and how much.
But
and
does
where.
anybody on the city council talk about restraining the growth? Or just
Yeah, I mean,
continuing
I
with
think
it?
more recently, as a lot of this stuff, particularly the Folly Hill development, has been coming in the news, I think there has been a lot more discussion about this. We're getting a lot of concerns from residents that enough is enough, and is this too much, and what is the plan? And I think that has spurred a lot of conversation among the council about what is the right amount and what can we do. So I think
Well,
it's a hot topic right now.
In my previous life, I worked on city planning, and I've been involved in businesses before in cities, and because we do tax businesses at a higher rate than we tax homeowners, but the right balance, it seems to me, from the work that I've done, is somewhere around 80-20. 80% homeowner, 20% commercial. Do you know where we are now?
Yeah, I think I think it's like 26% commercials. I want to say I'm not sure 100% on that. And I know that's been a big focus of our downtown, has been trying to do mixed use where you have commercial on the first floor and again, we've been having apartments, big apartments in some cases. I'm not sure that is ideal, but we're actually considering a zoning amendment for Cabot Street and Rantoul Street that would actually require first floors of buildings to be used as either, some sort of retail or active use that would be more of a commercial entity.
I have one more question about this. Now, Beverly has more affordable housing than is required by the state, but surrounding communities do not. They have very little, especially Hamilton, Wenham, Manchester, Marblehead. Does that make a difference
Yeah,
for
I think
Beverly to continue growing at the rate we are?
Well, first, I'd say every community is a little different. Beverly is much different than Manchester or Hamilton. And the other thing I would say is that affordable housing is an issue across the region and across the state. And I know from a state level, it's something that is being addressed. I do have concern that Beverly is taking on more of the development burden than our neighbors. And is that a good thing or not? I don't know. I just saw one of our neighbors just turn down an affordable housing project. I think this is all some stuff that we're discussing at the city council level. It's something I'm thinking about a lot. And what is the right approach for Beverly? We are at 12% of our housing units are affordable, listed as affordable. The state threshold is 10%, so we're over that, and I think we're compare favorably to some of our larger neighbors like Danvers and Peabody and Salem. But are we taking it on and other areas not taking it on? And to your point, where are folks coming in from and how does that affect our schools and our traffic and public safety? These are all important questions.
All right, let's move on to something else. Sanctuary,
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, really. At a school committee meeting a few weeks ago, the school committee voted to have sanctuary schools, whatever that means. Gail and I got up and spoke against it for a number of reasons, but one is, what makes you determine, let's see, I don't like this law, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. They didn't care about that. I brought up the fact that it costs a lot of money to educate a kid, and what about the people who are real legitimate taxpayers? Where are you on allowing the schools to do something like that and making the city a sanctuary city?
Well, the first point I think I'd make is that the school committee, that is their decision to make, whether they want to be a sanctuary school district or not. And I respect the right of the school committee to make that decision. As far as my view on that issue, I think number one, I think President Trump's election was a unique thing in history, and I think there are a lot of people that have had a lot of concerns about him in his style and some of the decisions that he's made, and I understand that. I respect that. But I think immigration is a federal issue. I think it's something that's being debated in Congress and on the federal level. For me, as a local city councilor, which is a nonpartisan office, I view the role of local government to be educating our kids and paving our streets and sidewalks and funding our police and fire to ensure public safety and debating zoning issues. I think those are the priorities of our local city council. I think those are the things that we should be spending our time on. My view on the sanctuary stuff is that we are a welcoming community already. We established a human rights committee last year, something I supported. I think our police, they have proper procedures and policies in place. I don't think they're going around trying to round people up. Our schools, I think, are welcoming. I don't think they're getting involved in asking, are you here legally or not? I mean, I think for me, there wasn't a lot of policy change involved in declaring us a sanctuary district or city. So for me, from a practical point of view, it didn't, wasn't necessarily something I was, running to get involved with.
But when you see what's going on in Salem, because Salem, I think, probably has a much higher level of immigrants, more immigrants, and of course, we don't know, are they legal or are they illegal? And the sanctuary cities are there to protect everyone. And that's what bothers a lot of people. We don't have these people vetted. We don't know who they are. We know that gangs are moving in. They're in Boston. They may be coming here. They may already be here. Very dangerous gangs. And when you become a sanctuary city, you're providing welcoming for everyone. And until these people commit a crime or until their records are known, and many people like to call them undocumented, they don't have any papers. We don't know who they are. And
Yeah,
they're
and-
coming here.
I think there's lots that goes into this issue, and it's a very divisive issue as well. And that was part of my
Sure.
hesitance to get involved in this issue. Is people have very strong feelings on both sides of this, and to me, again, as a city councilor who views my job as being one that's focused on the nuts and bolts of the city budget and educating our kids and paving streets and that sort of thing, I didn't think it was something I needed to get myself involved with.
But what would you do? And I asked this of another city councilor. What would you do, for instance, if it came up? His answer was, well, personally, I'm not in favor of it. And I asked him, what would you do if it came up for a vote? How would you vote? I didn't get an answer. So I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, I think it's pretty telling that it hasn't come to the city council. I think that's
But
an
it
indication
might.
right there. I guess anything is possible. I'm trying to be an open-minded person and listen to both sides. I personally, at this point, don't view that as something that we need to adopt here in Beverly. I don't think it's right for Beverly at this point. But again, if that's something that came before us, I would, of course, keep an open mind and try to consider all sides. But at this point, I don't see that being an issue
Well,
at the city council.
arguably it has come to the city council, and I'll tell you how, or it will be coming. If you have a growth of kids in the schools, and that means the school budget has to grow. And let's say we don't have enough money for the school budget to grow and still give the police their raises and the teachers their raises and fire their raises. That affects the city, so you have a choice. You have a choice to accept the school budget or not to accept the school budget. And you can't tell the school committee how to spend their money, but you could tell them why you voted against the budget. And let's face it, 50% of the of the city budget or about that is for the schools as it is, but we're having all kinds of sewer projects done, and we're paving streets and fixing sidewalks. Most of the people who live in the city appreciate that kind of work. And if that work isn't done, you take a walk on some of the side streets in Centerville, you can't walk on the sidewalks.
Yeah, no, that's a big issue.
So where's
across
our
the
money
street.
going? And that's how the city council can get involved.
Well, and
I'm not sure I quite follow the logic on that.
Well,
but
because the thing is, you've got the school budget. You've got to vote on the school budget. And the school budget, if you have a lot of extra kids in the school budget goes up this high. Which means if the school budget goes up
my
this
feeling is
high,
those kids are here.
Well, what happened this year when the school committee came to the city council and they wanted, I forget what the amount was it 200,000 extra for
this
the
year-
schools?
well, just last
and
night-
you gave it to them.
Well, just last night, there was a public hearing related to the school committee budget, and they are kicking around, their budget and what their needs are.
Do you ever say no to the school committee? Does anybody ever say no to the school committee for
Yeah,
their
listen,
budgets?
I think funding our schools is one of the top priorities of our city,
Of course.
in our city budget and our local government. So I want our kids to have excellent schools. I think it's important to the city, even if you don't have kids in the schools, that we have good
Of
schools.
course.
no argument there.
Yep.
So, I think the $4,000 kindergarten fee is too much. I've been advocating for a lot of things in the school. I got 3 young kids too.
Well, that goes down another path.
But the question about I guess the question about does anyone ever say no to the schools? I'm sure they do. I think there's been a healthy debate on the school committee lately. I think If you've been tuning in on that, I'm sure you have. You've seen some of that.
Well, when you bring up the $4,000 for the kindergarten, I want to know, and maybe this shouldn't be addressed to you, but to the school committee, full day kindergarten, to me, is nothing more than a babysitting service, because there is no proof anywhere that full day kindergarten helps improve the knowledge that children get to prepare them for first grade. And they're only 5 years old. They are still little. Full day kindergarten, I believe, and I've read different articles from different psychologists that say it's too much for a 5-year-old. And you're charging a fee now. But
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the point from an educational point of view. I've done some research on this too, and I think there is some evidence to suggest that kids that go to a full day program are able to pick up learning and particularly reading at an earlier age. I'm sure there's various research on both sides of that.
It all evens out as they progress
But I
through
think
school.
what I would say is that the affordability issue is one that's real for a lot of working families in Beverly. Early education is something that is being pushed at the state level.
I know.
80% of the communities have free full-day kindergarten. Beverly is one of the small minority of communities that charge anything, and we're even one of the smaller minorities that charge as much as $4,000. And if you're not going to send your kid to full-day kindergarten, that assumes that you're going to take care of your kid. Well, what if you work?
Oh, yeah.
What if you work? Then you're paying for daycare, right? And to your point,
Daycare is a lot more
is
expensive.
too, right? And so, again, this is something that, for me, is a burden to our young families who are struggling to get by in a lot of cases. When you look at surrounding communities where this is something that is part of the school budget, to me, that's an
But
issue.
just because other communities do it
No,
doesn't mean that it's
listen,
the best thing for the child.
Well, I am a believer that it is, and I respect that you have a different opinion on that, but I wouldn't be supporting it if I didn't think it did make a difference educationally.
I would love to continue this discussion, but we're almost out of time.
Wow, I hope I quit.
So, yeah.
But you are running for re-election, so if you
Yes.
want to say something,
Yeah, I
right
appreciate
in.
that.
something.
So, it's an election year. I've been a city councilor for the last 3-4 years, running for my third term. I think, this is a big time for Beverly, with a lot of big things happening in terms of development and critical decisions to be made moving forward. I work for Governor Baker on my day job. I've been involved in government and politics for the past 20 years, and look forward to continuing to serve my hometown.
Well, maybe next time you come along, we can talk about your survey. We didn't even get into that.
Yeah,
We didn't even
a lot
have
of
time.
Anytime.
But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have any last words to say, Elliot?
I have a lot of last words to say.
You might be able to
as-
get something in
At the
quickly.
bottom of the page, I was reading in the snooze today that Seth Moulton has decided that the firing of Comey is worse than Watergate. And I don't know where he comes up with that. I mean, all the Democrats were opposed to Comey last week, and all of a sudden, because Trump does something, now they're in favor of Comey. Isn't it time that the politicians in Washington got their act together and realized that they work for us and not for their party? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I think we got the message. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll stay tuned. We will be back again within a short period of time. So see you next time. Thanks again.